Hi, everyone. Welcome to White Noise Night Coffee Sessions, the monthly, bi-monthly podcast that we do here at White Noise. I am here today with Cole Solis Jativa, and I'm super excited to talk to her about art and poetry and all the in-between. So, my first question for you, Cole. Who is Cole Solis Jativa?
That's me. I suppose, like, stuff about me?
Yeah, like, who are you?
Okay. I am an Ecuadorian interdisciplinary artist. I was born in Cuenca. I immigrated here with my family when I was 2. Been on this journey since. I'm an MFA student right now. And yeah, I love poetry and printmaking and paper making, and it's just way too much stuff for my own good, to be honest with you. But yeah.
Awesome. Okay, and I think we need to get this out of the way, but for background, how do we know each other and what is our relationship? Because I think for viewers, they may be like...
True. Very true.
know.
We're best friends.
Yes.
We met, I think you were 18, therefore I was 19.
Mm-hmm.
6, maybe 7 years ago now. No.
Almost 7, yeah.
Almost 8,
Almost
actually.
8, yeah.
Wow, my math is wrong. Yeah, 8 years ago now. I started like hanging out with you and giving you tattoos, and our relationship just developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, I love you.
I love you too. So yeah, this is really such a privilege for me to be here with not only this incredible artist, but this person who I am so close with in my life. White Noise has been a platform for me to meet new people and to explore new terrains with art, but I'm so glad that I can also uplift those in my life who are so close to me and who are just so extremely talented like Cole is.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So my next question is, I know you are a multidisciplinary artist. I mean, and you just mentioned that for all of us. So as an artist with this background, what would you say are the mediums that you focus on the most?
That's a good question. I kind of struggle with that. I'm not going to lie to you, because it's hard for me to find a balance and perfect one thing and whatever. It's like, yeah, you can't really perfect anything in the time that you were here. But I think, yeah, I do I'll stick to poetry and I'll just work on my poetry nonstop. And then I'm like, whoa, I haven't drawn in like a month. Mm-hmm. And that's something I'm trying to get better at. It's like jumping from, or like navigating that in a healthier way that, so they can relate conceptually. And, like with my book that I'll be reading, I had most of the poems written, and then I did the designs for it, which I guess there's nothing wrong with, that's just the way that I intuitively work. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I definitely jump from one thing to the next, and I'm like, I'm bored, I gotta go back to writing or something.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
So it seems like the relationship between these forms is a really important part of the process for you.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about how you create those connections and relationships, whether it's something you plan out or whether it's something that just happens?
I'm definitely an intuitive artist. I don't really have an idea until I start working on the project. Mm-hmm. And, that really works for some people. And for others, they're like, oh my God, that's like a nightmare, But I think that somehow the natural process is just part of who I am. And the unfolding of it is, I guess, what kind of makes me me. And it also works with my duality as like what I focus on in my artwork and my writing. Like, it's just two sides to every coin kind of thing. I don't know if I answered that, but
yeah. Totally. Yeah. I think it's just interesting for people to hear that, because as someone who approaches so many different mediums as an artist, it can be, I mean, I think some people would be like, well, how do you create those connections? And I think the planning process is a big part of the whole thing, which is like, I guess what I'm getting to. And for some people, that's more like a physical planning. For you, it just seems more like it builds as it goes.
Yeah. And I guess it depends like what I'm doing. Like if I'm working on a book of recipes right now, and that I have to really plan out, because like for certain recipes to align with the artwork, it's like, and the book form I'm using, which is an accordion book, I have to plan each page kind of thing to like, but then the visuals come along, and it's like, that's the more intuitive part, I suppose. Yeah. But there are certain things that I definitely have to plan out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm going to pivot a little bit. I want to get into more of your beginnings as an artist. So what would you say your evolution of an artist has been like since the first time you can remember making something that you felt was significant?
Well, honestly, I didn't want to be an artist until I got to college. I was creative. I've always been creative, but initially I just started off as like a doodler, and like same thing with my poetry, just scribbling stuff down because I always journaled. And then when I got to college, I initially went for journalism, and I was like, I can't do this. Like, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life, because I just want to like draw. And so I guess that when I had that realization, it was like, okay, how can I conceptually integrate my thoughts into my practice? And then I like did a contract major in my undergrad, so I did English and creative writing and visual arts. Creative writing, visual arts, and geology, because I wanted to like involve like fossils and the natural world into my art, and I still definitely do, but I'm not as focused as like into the geology aspects of my work. They just kind of are there, embedded in it. But
literally embedded.
Good one. And so yeah, I'll like allude to a bunch of fossils and all of that good stuff into my poetry, but ever so slightly. I don't really study it as much anymore. I should probably. But yeah, then I started tattooing after my undergrad because I needed to make money and stuff, and that was great, but it wasn't like where my heart lied. So I kind of like decided, I got into a bike accident also, which you know about, in 2022, and I was like, all right, I have to really just start doing this again. And I started taking my life seriously and my artwork and writing way more seriously. Then I got into the grad program at SUNY New Paltz, and yeah, I've kind of just been,
doing a lot.
Yeah.
Doing a heck of a lot. So that brings us to the present. So how do you see yourself as an artist today?
I'm really, really happy with my art and where it's going. I just started working with glass, which is so exciting because I am learning how to bring in all of the things. And like I just learned how to crochet with glass, which is super exciting because I can introduce that into my book forms, and I can introduce like that into my, because I make jewelry as well. And, you know, I have all of these little hobbies that I feel like I can just elevate now that I'm getting into glass and stuff. So I feel like my graduate program has just helped me realize and feel confident about all of these tools that were given to me, I guess. And yeah, I'm just really excited to see what the future holds.
Yeah, I am too. So throughout your life, and maybe just presently, whatever you want to touch on, what would you say have been some of your main creative influences? Whether like people, or you mentioned like geology. So, you know, what has been things that have consistently inspired you?
The natural world, for sure. I don't know. I go outside and I'm like, I can just write now. I don't, for my writing, that's a lot of it. And then it's my cultural identity. A lot of it has to do with, you know, my childhood and where I grew up and how far my family has made it in this country. And that's like my world influences. Then there's writers that influence me, artists that influence me. Yeah. And my day-to-day, just like little moments that I can witness, and that is definitely invoked in my writing. Yeah.
Great. Do you want to touch on any like people, writers, artists that influence you in your work?
Well, right now, I'm definitely reading a lot of Clarice Lispector. She has been a big part of my writing this year. Hopefully just the way that her prose kind of traverses this, she's such a powerful soul, and you like see how much she just had like so much emotion in her writing. And I don't know, I just feel like that has been influencing me a lot lately. In the art world, wow, I can really delve into that, but
we have time.
There's a lot of, well, Kathy, of course. Kathy's been a main source of my inspiration. Kathy Caraccio, who helped me in this last project. She was my collaborator at the core. She's one of my biggest sources of inspiration, just her verve and how she views the world. She is a collaborator at the core, and I think that that's such an important aspect of printmaking, just your community and working with others. So there's her. And then I'm doing a lot of research on Native American artists and indigenous artists in Ecuador as well. But I am going to be going there soon, so I hope to really get in touch with my roots. Yeah. Awesome. And find more artists out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like a great, rainbow almost of different inspirations and stuff. And obviously, like, I know you very well, so yeah, I can tell all of those things. And I mean, I also love Clarice. She's incredible.
She's good.
And Kathy's amazing too. I have met her, and she's so wonderful.
She is.
And just such a great mentor to you. And, some people come into our lives and at the right moments, and it just seems like that's how that happened for you.
Yeah, totally. And same thing with Ana Cordeiro. She was introduced to me by my professor, Aurora de Armendi, and Anna's a book artist. She's a Brazilian book artist. She is phenomenal. Her work is incredible. But the way she views artist books, like her weaving and embroidery, and it's just, she's a phenomenal artist. And I definitely I look up to her book forms for sure. She's great.
Yeah. You guys got a lot of people to look up now. This is kind of a strange question, but I wanted to throw it in because I was curious to see what your response would be.
Love strange questions.
Do you think there are any misconceptions that people have about you and your art that you'd want to set straight?
That's a good question. I suppose the chaos that is my art, I feel like because I have bounced around so much, I feel like it's kind of difficult to take me seriously in that regard. Because I haven't been focusing on one thing for, I can't say that I've just wanted to like print make and make books for, because there's just so many things that I do. But I think learning to integrate that is like the beginning of my journey right now. And like we talked about earlier, just like using all of these tools that I'm getting on my belt right now it's kind of where, I don't know if it's a misconception kind of thing, but I think it may be something.
Assumptions.
Yeah. Or an insecurity kind of thing on my own part. But yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like when I look at your work, I guess because I also, as you know, have a really chaotic mind, it makes so much sense to me. But now that you say that, I can see how it can be viewed like that, even though there is so much precision in everything that you do.
Thanks.
That it's hard to see it as chaotic, but also people could say that about like, I mean, I'm thinking of like Jackson Pollock, for example, like his stuff, his paintings like really epitomized what people saw as like chaos.
Right.
But there was so much precision even in the randomness of how he created. So I don't know. That's kind of like different from your art in, I mean, like every way, but I think it just takes someone to really know you and to sit with your work to see through that and to see all of the planning,
It's a really good point you make about like Jackson Pollock, but I think that the journey that we have as artists, we just like put ourselves on these pedestals, right? All of us do, writers, artists, like of all forms, and it's just like we feel like we have to be the best we can absolutely be, especially now when it's like competition is crazy scary, and it's ultimately none of that really matters. Obviously, it's just like it's what you make of your own journey at the end of the day. But it's totally terrifying, and I think that it's a rational thought to be like, okay, like how can I be the best that I can possibly be in my field? Which I suppose it's not a bad thing. It's just like we want to do better.
Yeah, of course. And I think that's a testament to what you've been saying about always wanting to approach something in a new way, or even like approach a new thing entirely. Because I think mixing things up for some people, and I feel very similarly as well, like that in itself is so inspiring and just gives you a different outlook on things that have maybe like stagnant in your creative process. It's a way to
Totally
get a new outlook, and I think perspective is super important when you're creating. And some artists thrive in a setting where it's just they do the same thing forever, but I think in like artists that are super interesting to me are artists that can kind of just throw you off.
right,
Or
like go MIA for like 3 years and then come back and it's just like,
yeah.
But yeah, again, it's like the world that we live in. It's of course it's all part of that crazy journey that nothing makes sense. I guess what I'm trying to say is that nothing makes sense looking forward. It just makes sense looking backwards. You're like, oh
Yeah.
right, that's why, and I think that's something that we all kind of have to let go
That's so true.
to remain present.
Absolutely. And it's like the hardest thing.
Yeah.
It's really the hardest thing.
Yeah.
But somehow you're doing it.
Somehow we're all doing it, man.
Yeah. I mean, I think like we all got to give ourselves a little more credit,
Totally.
Yeah.
Just waking up in the morning, it's like,
Oh my God.
damn, we made it another day in this fucking chaotic world. Yeah.
So this kind of brings me to my next question, which is, what do you feel are your strengths as an artist?
My strengths, my consistency, I think. I'm, regardless of what I'm doing, poetry, art, crocheting, jewelry, I don't know. I'm still doing stuff every day. And I think that that's really important, regardless of stagnancy or productivity levels. I think that I'm kind of stubborn in that regard, but that makes me a strong individual, I suppose, first and foremost. And I think that I'm a great collaborator. I love working with other people, and I think that that's super important, and building community. And again, in this world where we're just made to be so competitive and like all of these things, it's good to just let people in and just be creative. Yeah,
I would agree.
thanks.
And then the inverse of that, where do you feel yourself faltering at times?
Good question. I suppose being easy on myself. I'm like really hard on myself a lot of the time. And I kind of have to remind myself to just let go. Nothing is going to ever be perfect, And I think that frustration kind of puts me at this wall a lot of the time, where I'm still creating, but it's like I'm not creating with passion. I'm just creating to create. That's definitely one. I can definitely be like more organized and like planning out my art, and I don't know, going in this way that I feel, especially, I don't know, as a Virgo, if you would think that I'm way more organized than I am, but it's always just discombobulated up there. I don't know.
I mean, I think when you're approaching so many different things too, it can make it harder to be organized.
Yeah.
In the ways that you want to. I mean, I see you as a really organized person, but I think that maybe it's obviously it's different for you because there is so much going on, and it's so easy to like lose track of things. I'm assuming when you are doing so much. And I know that like you also are doing way more than just your art.
Yeah.
So that's like more on top of that, you know.
Yeah, lots of pressure.
Yeah.
Lots of pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess that's your 20s, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, quick coffee sip. This is night coffee sessions, right? Okay, so next is kind of a whole section which is about your book.
Okay.
Your artist book, Sheathed by the Wing of an Albatross. Obviously, I saw you create this from start to finish in very intimate moments, in every moment. I saw you perform it in Philly last month, which was such a privilege.
Thanks.
And yeah, so I'm curious, because I think everyone else is super curious, if you could tell me, what inspired you to start creating this book. And then I'll jump into more questions from there.
Well, this book is going to be part of my thesis show, my graduate degree thesis show. And I felt like it was a vital part of this journey I want to embark on as like a very devoted artist and individual to life, choosing life. And, I had a more difficult childhood, and I feel like that I'm embracing it and kind of using this particular work to heal from all of that and just let go. And I think that it's mostly for my family too, who's gone through this experience with me, and I just love them so much. And I feel like my mom is a survivor in every way, shape, and form, and she did it all by herself, and that's something that I have to share with everyone.
Yeah.
So it's kind of my story, but not so much it's just poetic storytelling. So it's not as explicit, but it's all in there.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, obviously, as poetry, it's very interpretive. I think my perspective is interesting just because I really understand everything.
Yeah.
But it's so curious, I'm so curious to see how other people view your work, because it's I don't really know people's poetry as well as I know your poetry. Right. So it's, besides myself, but that doesn't count.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I'm just curious if people would read it. Obviously they wouldn't read it the same way that I do, the same way that you do, the same way that your family does. But I think the interpretation is important, and I think you get your point across really well, especially through the visual aspect as well, which was a huge part and probably the longest part.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about that, what that was doing, creating the prints alongside the poetry?
So, yeah, of course. The poems came first. And I had no real plan for the prints. I just knew that I wanted to work with viscosity. And I collaborated with Kathy in this book, and she is a master viscosity printer. She's worked with the pioneers of it and has just, basically knows so much about the form of printing. And I wanted to embrace that because she is my collaborator in the print aspect of the book. So I suppose I I would tell her my idea for each. I had some sketches for each poem, and I would read her the poem, and then she would kind of guide me through the ins and outs of working with viscosity printing, which I guess I should talk a little bit about viscosity printing. It's using different fluid, like one more fluid ink versus a more a stiff ink. So one repels the other while you print. It's like simultaneous color printing for a reason, because you're running the matrix through the press once and you're achieving all of these depths and colors. But the premise is basically lying like an oil-based ink, a very loose ink, under a stiffer ink that gets repelled by the oil once you roll it over. So it kind of does this like very interesting 3D depth thing. It's really cool. So I had plastic plates that I etched into with dry point, and then I made collagraphs. Collagraphs are basically plates that you make from found objects. So I used book cloth, I used string, I used contact paper, I used aluminum tape. Like, there were all of these mediums I wanted to, I guess, put onto my plates in order to accomplish different textures. So the collograph would go underneath the dry point, and I would run them through the press for some of them, there's 2 plates, some have 1 plate. So it's really interesting in that regard how the methodology in printing, some were much easier to do, and others were like very intense. Like 3 Days of Polyphemus, for example. Like, we use little stencils. That's the one with the moths, of course. Also, you're dedicated to you. But I used Mylar basically, and I did viscosity on each single moth, and then ran that through the press in order to like block out the moths on that collograph. And then I printed the moths on top of that and the dry point.
Wow.
Hard to grasp in a sense, and it's hard to visualize it without actually seeing the work. But yeah, some were a lot tougher to do, and figuring out how they would work was like a big part of the process for Kathy and I. But her brain is just like, she's just like, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to get it done. Because I was like, I really want the moths in there. And she was like, let's just digitally put the moths on there. And I was like, no, I want my viscosity moths. Yes. And she was like, all right, this is what we're going to do. And she just helped me troubleshoot with her like mastermind printing skills. And yeah, it worked out.
Yeah, it sure did. So what would you say was the most satisfying part of making your book? Was there like a moment where you were just like, oh my God, yes?
Yeah, I think really learning to understand how Kathy's mind works in like having done this for over 50 years, you know? She's just like, oh, well, that won't work, but let's try this. And just like really getting to, you know, I feel like I would have given up on my own, but she was just like, no, we're going to try this and hopefully it works. And I think that was so satisfying to just see her, you know, in her little studio on 39th. Like, I was just like amazed every day I worked with her. And we just like played so many games, and it was never a boring time in that studio. So yeah,
it was a magical place for sure.
Magical place. You've been there. With the little salad station on her and
desk. It seems like it would be a big place, but it is so tiny.
Yeah, it's
like
probably the size of the stage.
Literally the size of this stage, which you can't see obviously, but it is quite small. Definitely magical though, with a great view.
Yeah,
in the middle of Manhattan.
Yeah.
So what ways would you say creating this book propelled your understanding of artistry, of whether like artistry in general, artistry of your own, and in what ways did it like rewire conceptions that you had about creating a book from scratch?
Well, I learned a lot in regarding being able to stand up for my own person and like knowing what I want and also knowing what's possible and what's not possible. And I think I would have done a lot of things differently if I was to do another iteration of the book. But I learned about, because the book, it's not bound, it's their portfolios. But that was also, I was really headstrong about wanting to bind the book. And she said, no, it's just, I'm not a bookbinder. I can't help you in that aspect. And I also wanted to respect her, like her part of the process. And I think that letting go of some things, I also learned was so beneficial down the line. Like, I'm happy I didn't bind the book because now I can present it and like I can present all of the pages in a gallery if I want, or whatever space I intend for this book to be, library, I don't know. But yeah, I definitely learned to also give in to when I was being stubborn or whatever. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot to say in that regard, but
it's interesting that you mentioned there were a lot of things you would do differently, because that was actually going to be my next question. If you were to start everything over again, like what would you say would be one of the main things you would do differently?
Not use a typewriter. Not use an effing typewriter, because I love my typewriter. Great. But screen printing, so much easier. Not the easiest route is not always the best route, but I'm still typing the poems for all of the editions. There's only 6, but when I make a mistake, it's like, do I want to use whiteout or do I want to start over? And then I have to give up. So I can't spend too much time on that before I'm like just frustrated and want to flip a table over kind of thing. So maybe that's one of the things. And I think another thing would be like color wise, like being more intentional with my palette, because I had just way too much fun with it, which is great and all, but after seeing the prints and knowing how viscosity printing works and layering wise, I think that I would have tweaked some of the colors, and Kathy and I only had a very limited amount of time to finish the work before I had to move back upstate and grad school. So she was like, no, I want this project done. So sometimes we would just be like, all right, this color works. So that's that. Yeah, there's definitely other things too, but those are the first things that came to my mind.
Yeah, the typing part, definitely. I felt your pain throughout that. I was just like, oh God,
that's gonna be bad.
Yeah. But I obviously totally believed in you, and I think, like you said, you're putting in way more effort to make it perfect, and it's gonna pay out, but it's like definitely one of those things where it's like, well, I did that, so now I don't ever have to do it again.
Right, yeah. And I remind myself, like, I am only human. It is not a machine doing this. Like, I have to be easier on it's, again, one of those things where I'm like, all right, I gotta chill, because I'm literally using a typewriter to type out, like, 80 poems. You know? It's, yeah.
So would you say that it ended up the way you had originally envisioned it?
Things are definitely different, but it's better than I envisioned it. And, you know, I will never forget this one day we started printing. Kathy was like, listen, just know it's going to look good. Like, that's all I can promise you. And I was like, God damn it. Like, I am so scared because I had no idea what to expect. But she's right. It's better than we both expected.
Yeah.
So I'm super grateful.
Yeah.
Infinitely grateful for her and her mind. Yeah.
So, you know, you kind of just touched on it, but what would you say your feelings are towards it now in its final form?
Well, I think that every poet can agree. Going back and reading any material, you're like, oh, I would tweak that just a bit.
Yeah.
I would change just a bit. So there are certain things. I also, you know, I had a lot of people edit the book. You were one of them. Thank you. But yeah, I feel like maybe I should have also had one of like my professors read it as well, like Timothy Liu. I would have loved if he read it. He still can, but I feel like he would be like, all right, we gotta change some things. So there are certain things I would, in the writing aspect. The prints I would not change for, you know, even if the colors weren't exactly how, like, I would have done differently, I wouldn't go back and change any of that.
Yeah.
But I think that we can always go back and make our writing better.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I think about a lot as a poet, and there is a really big part about creating a book where acceptance comes into play, and knowing that you wrote that at a point in your life when you felt those things really strongly and you felt like this was a complete piece of work at some point in your life. And we grow and we change and we move beyond that naturally.
Yeah. And
to expect our present selves to like something that we created, that our past self created, I've realized that it's just not realistic. And you know, I read my old stuff. I mean, if I read my old stuff, I rarely ever do, because I'm like, oh my God. But you know, it's difficult to really like take a step back and just know that, you know, you created that at a time in your life, and now you're writing different poetry already, you know. That's just the evolution of the work, and
just gotta embrace it.
You gotta embrace it.
Yeah, totally.
And they are great poems.
Thanks,
and
bro.
They really like do justice for all of the themes that you were talking about before, and I can't wait for you all to hear it on Friday when Cole is coming back here and performing them. But yeah, I mean, it's really easy to get bogged down by those feelings, but I think, you know, once it's like finally done, I feel like you'll feel like it's done.
Yeah,
and it's
totally.
like, you know what? It is what it is. And
you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm still curating prints and I'm still tipping the poems on. So, yeah, I think once my thesis show is kind of over, I'll look at things a lot differently. But I'm still feeling right in the midst of the chaos. Yeah.
But you're almost there.
almost there.
So that was all the questions I had about your book. Thank you for answering all of those. And I hope this made all you viewers super excited to read more, because it is just such an incredible piece of art. And, you know, the poetry and the prints stand alone in their greatness. As a collection, it's truly a work of art. And, you know, I feel so privileged to have seen you through all of that. And, you know, it is really crazy to just see how much you have grown as an artist in this past year alone.
Thank you.
Of course. It
means a lot.
Yeah, of course. And I am a little biased, but I truly do feel that. And I think, you know, it's just going to be great the more people hear your stuff. I think I invited you to do this event because you had this book coming out, and I just want everyone to hear it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So moving on to new and, you know, greater things. I mean, I don't know how we can get better than that, but everything is always building, right?
It's always, yeah. The
So
journey is real.
Any exciting projects you're working on, or anything you're excited to undertake this coming year?
Yeah, I'm actually gonna work on probably the biggest I've ever worked in my entire life. Mm-hmm. But it's actually related to the book. The first poem, Nurturing a Concrete Garden, it's about the first room that my family, I say room because it was literally a room. 4 of us lived in one room for a year, the first year we were here. And I'm going to recreate that room with jumchi. Jumchi is a form of Korean felting, so it's using water and agitation to make a stronger hanji paper. Hanji is a paper made from mulberry. So I know you've seen some of my quilts that I've made from jumchi, but yeah, I'm gonna sew panels and make the room a replica of the exact room, and it's gonna hover over the book in my thesis show.
To scale?
To scale.
To scale.
To scale.
Wow.
So it's going to be like 9 feet by 14 feet by 10-ish feet. I'm still figuring out the numbers because, you know, it's all from, my mom was like, yeah, this looks about right. We were like measuring the ground with like a tape measure, and she was like, yeah, that looks right. So I'm still figuring out the details, but there was this moment, I'm trying to capture a specific memory, when we were able to spread to the rest of the apartment, because it was one room in our first apartment in Corona, Queens. When we spread to the rest of the apartment, my mom was able to have a tenant in the room. And it was an empty room, and I remember this one day. I think I was like 7 or 6 or something, and I told all my cousins, I was like, let's play teacher. We just scribbled all over the walls of this room, like everywhere. When I mean everywhere, I mean like my mom was fucking pissed.
Oh
She
my
was
God.
like, what the hell is this? And everybody just looked at me and ran, and I was like, sorry. So I'm gonna try to recreate that moment and like just go feral on some jumchi and really release, and I think it'll be a very cathartic moment. Yeah.
Do you think that catharsis plays a big part in your art in general?
Yeah, definitely, like embracing the demons and like learning to dance with them is a big part of what I do. And I wouldn't say I'm a sad person at all. Like, and I think that helps me so much. I'm just like healing through my art and like finding the beauty in that. yeah, and that's in those situations that otherwise, you know, outside looking in, one would be like, that's kind of tough. But I don't know. I feel like it made me who I am.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, in every, dark moment we go through, it's just more creative fodder for us in the future.
Totally. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the way I try to think about it. It like gives hope in moments that feel hopeless.
Yeah.
And it's just, yeah, I mean, I could say a lot about that, like, especially touching on our friendship and stuff, but I would just say that I think good things are always around the corner.
Yeah. And it just adds fuel to that fire that we have inside. So, again, going back to the embracing aspect, it's, you can't have one without the other.
I mean, that's super exciting about your new project too, because I didn't know about that. So I'm also like, whoa, okay. I'm gonna be asking you way more questions when this, clicks off. But I think it just seems like such a great way to tie everything together. It's like a physical, it's such a physical thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you have been growing towards, is like this like really embodied presence in your art. And that is like as embodied as it gets, right?
Yeah, I suppose. And then storage-wise, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with that thing, but because that's, I think, why I don't work big. I'm like, I need to put that somewhere.
Right.
That's going to be a big work of art that I'm going to create. So, I don't know. But yeah, totally embodying the experience, building the concrete garden.
Yeah.
And nurturing it.
Yeah.
Totally. And it's going to feel good.
Yeah. How did that idea come to you?
Honestly, I don't know. Just one day I was like, I'm going to recreate the room. I was reading the poem, Nurturing a Concrete Garden. And I was just like, damn, it would be really cool to see that room now in its current state. My mom was like, I don't think that's gonna be possible. I was like, I really want to go back there. And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, you know what, I'm gonna make it. And I'm gonna I mean, it's all gonna be from memory, but who cares?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really gonna be the ultimate release and the tip off to my journey that I'm, once all of this is kind of behind me, I don't think it'll ever be like purely behind me, because it's one with me. I don't know. I feel like I'll just be able to make art for me, if that makes sense. Because right now it's like, it's not just for me. It's for my mom predominantly, who she's a survivor and my hero.
Yeah.
And
my hero.
She is awesome. And we'll be here Friday.
Yeah. So another reason to come.
Another reason to come. Love you, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it really feels like the perfect way to get that closure.
Yeah.
Not like like you said, not like there ever is like true closure, but it is a way to have control over your past, because you're creating something that once was confining to you.
Yeah.
Which held a lot of significance, more than just being a room.
Yeah.
And now it's like you have the control to create that in your image as you see it today.
That's a beautiful way of putting it, like reclaiming that.
Yeah, totally. And it's totally yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so beautiful.
Thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to like start focusing on, not identity stuff. And who knows where that is going to go, but I have ideas formulating about my next work, my next body of work or bodies of work. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all really excited to see where that goes.
Thanks.
So one of my last questions is, what would be some advice that you have to artists out there who feel stifled by their current art form and want to expand into new ones?
Don't let that stop you from making art. And frankly, I feel like as an artist, you kind of can't stop making art, like no matter what. But I feel like we kind of are scared of all the pressure. A lot of artists, I was totally like, I don't think I'm gonna make it, and who cares? Who cares if I make it or not make it? Like, it's just keep creating and just choosing life.
Yeah.
Because it's really terrifying out there. And I feel like most artists that do create because of the fear that surrounds us. I don't know if I'm articulating that well, but there is a force that drives all of us, and sometimes that force is kind of bigger than we can handle, and that's a stifling thing. So yeah, just keep doing it no matter how scary it is.
Yeah, this is actually something I was talking about in the first podcast that we had here with H.R. Webster, and we were talking about the fear associated with poetry and how and art in general, and how it's like we create out of compulsion. And I kind of made this anecdote about, I said anecdote because it actually, okay, whatever. I created this anecdote where poetry is the antidote to like a poison that I feel I have within me. And I think that kind of coincides with that idea a lot.
Yeah.
And how it's like this, I mean, for some people, it's like it's like something we need to get out, like that catharsis thing we've been focusing on, that we've been focusing on a lot. It's something we need to get out of us, I just watched that movie, The Substance, which is man. Like,
yeah.
I don't know if you viewers out there have seen it, but
yeah,
kind
terrifying.
Of like, yeah, I have thoughts about that movie that I'm not going to touch on here, but
I'll look at your Letterboxd. Don't worry.
Yeah, you should. Yeah, guys, follow me on Letterboxd. I write extensive reviews.
Extensive.
Yeah, I kind of go way too hard.
Which I love. I'm like, I need to read Robyn's review before I look at any movie. So funny. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, all good. But yeah, like how, that movie is really about this thing within us that we feel like is the better version of ourselves coming out and kind of living our lives for us. And I think that is kind of like what our creative side is in a way. It's like once it's out and once it has developed into something that we feel proud of, that's like that is what we want to put out in the world. Yeah. That's like how we want ourselves to be represented, is in that form, whatever form it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I suppose like there's just so much to think about when making artwork, and it's like we just I don't know, I think I should speak in my own accord. Like I feel so guilty a lot of the time, just like breathing this air. I'm like, right now, being able to do this is such a privilege. And I think about that all the time, and like, do I even deserve to make art? And how can I do it in a way that I feel okay with my presence, you know, as a what I view like I'm a successful immigrated individual here. You know, there's so many people struggling all over the world, and I don't know, I think that should also be the fuel. That is the fuel, ultimately.
Absolutely. We have to do what, you know, other people don't have the ability to do, so we can give voice to people who don't have that voice.
Yeah.
And although we don't have that experience, we have the ability to create those connections and amplify those voices. And that's like a big part about what this podcast is. You know, although I am talking to established artists a lot of the time, it's like, you know, when we do White Noise, we have so many different artists come on this stage and perform here, from established artists to people who have never performed before in their life, to people who don't even consider themselves an artist and are just getting up here and doing whatever they feel comes naturally to them.
Yeah.
And I think doing this podcast is a way for me to spread the voices of artists in this area further than they're able to reach in a setting that's just this stage on one night. And to really expand upon what it is to be an artist. And I think these conversations are important, not just for viewers, but for me and you.
Yeah.
You know, they inform so much about our own processes to ourselves. You know,
Totally,
I think voicing these things, like, that's why we have therapy, guys, you know.
Yeah.
We got to talk shit out. Like, it's so important to just speak and have these dialogues. And I feel so fortunate to be in this position and be able to interview people like you and, you know, Leah and HR, and everyone else who comes on this podcast in the future. I think it's been so wonderful so far. And each time I leave with a better sense of myself and as an artist, and then art in general, and then this person that I'm interviewing, and it's such a cool situation. And, you know, yeah, I totally feel what you're saying, though.
Yeah. No, this has been great and definitely inspiring. I am like feeling inspired.
Yeah.
By what we've talked about, and it's given me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
In terms of my own work and how I want to proceed with what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But also, you're right, like, White Noise is a space of inclusivity. It's just like everyone is welcome, and it's a phenomenal thing you bring to our community, truly. And coffee sessions, it's just a way to really tap in to that one reader that you invite, and it's just focusing on that insight and perspective was really cool.
Thank you. Yeah. I think, you know, as a journalist too, that is like my full-time career, which is like so weird to say. It just felt like I had to do this, because this is like,
for you.
Yeah, it's just like melding the things that I love about my job into a space that I feel I can really talk in. And, you know, as a journalist, you don't really have like conversations like this. It's like really one-sided. I mean, that's the job. I'm like not complaining. That's just literally the job. You know, I'm lucky enough that I'm like social and am able to create conversation in those settings, but this is just so much more rewarding for me. And yeah, I mean, this is not about me though. This is about you. So let's get the record straight. But
You're funny.
I just wanted to touch on that as we finish up here. So I guess my final question for you is, do you have any final fleeting thoughts, mantras?
Not really. I'm definitely an introvert, so this is, I feel like my only form of being an extrovert is like with social lubricants. So it's really exciting to get out of my comfort zone and, do something like this. So thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Thank you for coming and for exploring this with me and the world. So yeah, I guess that's all she wrote. Thank you all for tuning in to our third installment of White Noise Night Coffee Sessions here at Greenkill. Please support what we do. You can check out the Greenkill Substack page and learn more about all of the amazing events that go on here at Greenkill. And please come to our next event, which is in 2 days. Well, I don't know actually when you're watching this, but our next event is on Friday, April 25th, featuring Cole. And it's going to be wonderful. She's going to be reading her poetry, showing you guys her art. She's going to have some digital copies of her book for sale, which is super exciting. And yeah, I mean, beyond that, I'll see you guys soon. But thank you for joining in today. White Noise signing off.